Call of Duty dev speaks out on Call of Duty and what's been happening with SBMM.
Next, there's actually multiple COD devs taking shots at their ex-colleagues right now. The first is Glenn Schofield, and you might remember Glenn from his time at Sledgehammer Games. And I saw this Modern Warzone tweet and it said, "I hate doing this, but since I left Sledgehammer, none of the games have been very good." And I was like, hold on, I have to see the full context of this, just to make sure that he isn't being taken out of context.
So let's talk about this. This is a pretty important topic to discuss. We are talking about Call of Duty not really changing. And the last one, Modern Warfare 3, has been getting a score of 50, which means that every single Call of Duty, especially the developer, is worried about the new Call of Duties releasing. And it definitely makes me worried as well. It does seem like the main developer's concern is that the new Call of Duties under Microsoft management, if you don't know what happened, basically Activision got bought out, Treyarch got bought out for about $55 billion in total. Didn't they buy the whole BattleNet anyway? And we are seeing a different quality in games, and we're seeing, the studio get a bit more lazy, or they are preparing for the Modern Warfare 4 while thinking, okay, people will buy Black Ops 7 anyway, let's make next year more profitable, right? And I feel like this could be a big detrimental step that what ends up happening is we get another Halo scenario, we get another Gears of War scenario where these games were really legacy games, or like Mass Effect. These were games that were talked about 10 years ago like it was the gospel, and now what we're seeing is these games are nowhere near sight, no new release dates, barely any play style. And again, same thing could be happening to Call of Duty, just like it happened to PUBG. And maybe Call of Duty is taking its audience too much for granted here, because games are getting more and more competitive. Very common example of this is Warzone. Of course, 2020, massive bump, but slowly but surely we have actually seen Warzone player count drop, and they couldn't really bring, even with Warzone 2, yeah, it's awesome, but never to the original hype it had. So yeah, this is no joke. This is a billion-dollar industry, and they could be losing a lot of money as well.
Andy asking, saying, as someone who understands the Call of Duty machine and what's required to make that successful, what challenges do you foresee now that that's under a big corporation in Microsoft? And Schofield responds, well, first of all, if they go to not every year, they lose $1 billion every year. So that's why Call of Duty never did that. I worry about it immensely, I really do, because that's what's happening to Gears of War. Where's Halo? You know what I mean? And you look at EA.
So this is the big problem Battlefield 6 has. It just can't compete. And yes, they are losing not only $1 billion every year, they're losing $2 to $3 to $4 billion. Again, their games make $4 billion, and they cost about $500 million to make. So every time they release a Call of Duty, we haven't seen them, actually lose money, even with Call of Duty Ghosts. Maybe it underperformed, but no way, shape, or form will they lose money on this. They're always going to make, tons and tons and tons from skins, from added content, not only from selling the game, they add a post-launch, which adds a ton of content overall. And this is a cool thing, they have. They have tons of things just like Fortnite, but I really fear here that, just releasing every year for sake of releasing is going to cause them trouble in losing the player base, or at least listening to the community would be a nice start. But instead of listening to the community, they just kept the stuff that they felt was right, like the SBMM and other features. And, they had the events COD Next, while it just shows how misaligned the community is and the managers. If you guys don't know what happened at the COD Next event, basically streamers that were Black Ops 6 zombie streamers had to play Warzone when they never wanted it, and they didn't want to play the new map with just a few new guns, but they kind of, put them in a lobby and forced them together when they literally, the point of COD Next event is to show new content for Black Ops 7. So not Warzone, and they're pushing Warzone when nobody wants to play it.
Once I played my 30 minutes of zombies, they really want me to play Verdansk. I know this is going to become clipped. Yeah, guys, we're keeping on. We're keeping on. Okay, first gun packed. Let's go back to the box and let's see what else we can get our hands on.
So yeah, even developers go back and say, oh, since I have left the studio, there hasn't really been a good Black Ops game. I think the games were good, like Modern Warfare and Black Ops 6. They were good games, don't get me wrong, but just the quality of games has dropped slightly.
And then, when I go to Activision, I made Modern Warfare 3 in 2011. As a matter of fact, Modern Warfare 3 was the last Call of Duty to win Action Game of the Year, and my other 2 games were nominated for it. But, you don't see them. So, it's all over the place, and I think that this has always been Bull. He basically feels like with the current Microsoft ownership structure and the current folks in charge of studios like Sledgehammer, they're just not putting out good games. And he seems to feel like there's a personnel problem. Soft structure now, where previously they had their own one. I think that's what he's alluding to, but it's this next paragraph that ties it together. So I'll give a selfish example. I hate doing.
So yeah, it does seem like Call of Duty has some sort of management problem, especially in parts of listening to the community and implementing these changes. They're like, we hear you, we're going to remove SBMM, and then they need 5 years to actually do it. I just feel like after the Microsoft acquisition, there's some problems going on there, or some employees left, some employees were replaced. And this is what usually happens with these big type of deals. A lot of people leave because they get their golden parachute, so per se. They get a few $1 million and end up, looking for another creative project. They're burnt out from Call of Duty. Nothing has beaten, the 2011 awards. They haven't gotten any awards basically for the newer Call of Duties because they were repeating the same pattern and hoping for success, which usually works until you do it for like 15 years already. And most of the fans, they have been playing COD for a long time, multiple games. The only real change for Call of Duty is not Battlefield 6, but is actually lack of sales. If their revenue drops, which I think it is right now, especially when they release this Warzone stuff and they're losing actively players every single day for Warzone and their biggest cash cow, this is what's really going to change COD forever. Actively firing people, hiring new ones, changing the game completely. This is the only thing. Innovation, again, just like they did 10 years ago, that would be an amazing part. But for now, they're just enjoying the ride. They're enjoying the wave as long as this money lasts, as long as people keep buying the games. And I think people will keep buying the games because, yeah, they are cool, but they're nothing new to it. So we're going to see what changes. Games are getting more competitive. And basically the old dev said, well, it hasn't been getting any better since, I left. So it is a pretty clear idea that Call of Duty needs to make some drastic changes at this point.